Good morning! Welcome back to the Enneagram Mom series. I'm Whitney Ellison with Wellison Enterprises. We only have 3 episodes left, and today's episode is going to be awesome. We have a wonderful guest today, Daisi Owens of My Stir Crazy Kitchen. But before we get started, I want to remind you that the Enneagram is a wonderful tool for developing self-awareness and empathy. The mission of this show is to amplify mom voices by telling our stories, honoring our differences, and offering useful tips from our specific Enneagram types to help all moms and all parents in general. Today's episode sponsor is Gallia Collaborative. Gallia Collaborative is a group created by women for women, dedicated to providing women with accessible expert services and resources to heal, grow, and lead. You can go on their website and actually take a free wellness assessment test. And also, they just started this November a prenatal women's circle. I believe it is available virtually. So check out Gallia Collaborative, and thank you so much for your support. Now, on to our amazing guest, Daisi Owens. Daisi is new to the Enneagram. She started this past year. She is a Type 9 and a fabulous Type 9 at that. She's the mother of 2 absolutely cute, darling little boys. She is the founder of My Stir Crazy Kitchen. And so I'm going to bring Daisi on now. And while I do, I see you, Felicia. Good morning. Come on down. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I almost forgot headphones in. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Are you there? Can you hear me? Did I just mess that up?
It just like glitched for a second, but now I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, the technology gremlins. So is this your first
I don't
Instagram
have
Live?
fancy.
Uh-oh. Okay. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to fix something. Stay with me. How's that? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks for hanging with me. Sometimes we just have to kind of roll with it. So
Yeah, sure.
anyway, thank you for joining me this morning. How are you?
I'm good. This is my first Instagram Live ever.
Oh, well, you're already a guru at Instagram, so this will be very natural for you. It has been a long time, friend.
I know. I thought I was going to see you in Chicago that one year. I was so excited, and then I was like, oh no, you're not here.
Yes, I forgot about that. And you know what's funny? So, okay, for people watching, and I see 5 little cubs join. Felicia, thanks for staying with us while we got through the technical glitches. Daisi and I have known each other for like pushing 20 years, maybe even a little more. We met in 1999 when we started college. And actually our birthdays are 1 day apart. So we have a lot in common.
We do. I can't believe it's been that long.
I can't either. And we both have a big birthday coming up next year.
Don't remind me.
All right. Well, let's get started. Daisi, you're doing some really, really, really awesome things. And I'm so thrilled. It's a privilege to have you on here to talk about what's going on with you. So I'd love if you could share with our audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're up to these days.
Okay. Like you said, I have My Stir Crazy Kitchen, which is a blog I started a few years ago after I had my second baby. Before that, I was a CPA doing corporate accounting and go, working. We had a nanny, we had a daycare. It was just really stressful. And so the company I was working for was not a good environment. So when I was pregnant, in the back of my mind, I was like, after the second baby, I don't think I'm going to go back. And my husband was fully supportive. So it made the decision easier because I honestly don't know how working moms do it when you have more than 1 kid. Even 1 kid is hard, but 2 or more, it's like, how do you do it?
Right.
So now I have my blog, and I've been working on that. And I just recently went to an Instagram business school and kind of like reset my goals. I still don't know the direction it's going to go in, but now I'm like super pumped about it.
Awesome. Okay, so talk to me a little bit more about your blog and about your brand and what you've created.
So originally I mean, honestly, I started this 10 years ago. It was a different name, but it was just to share the recipes that I created and I liked, or if I found a great one that I thought my friends would like, I would blog about it. Because everybody would always ask, you know, like, what is this? Where did you find this recipe? So I just started it that way. And then recently it's become more of like lifestyle since I do
Mhm.
have the boys. And so I like to get them involved in the kitchen. And they like to bake, they like to juice, they like to chop, they like to do it all. So like the more they're involved, the more they eat. And so I'm kind of leaning towards taking my brand that way, like getting your kids in the kitchen, creating meals together for those memories and the connection that it brings.
Well, and that's so relevant too, especially right now as we relearn how to slow down and gather and be
Yes,
with each other. Lord knows we've got a lot of solid, close family time right now.
it's true.
Yes, for better or worse, and mostly for better.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that I think you've tapped into something that is brilliant in that we as parents get tired of making lunches for our kids. It becomes boring to them and unfun to us. And why not involve them? Why not get creative? Why not exercise that right brain activity and make something that is a chore into something that's fun? And so I really love what you've been doing with that. For you all that aren't already following Daisy, she shares a lot of really creative ideas, innovative ideas about what to do with food that will please your kids at lunch and makes for a fun activity to do together as a family. And someday I hope that my children are inspired to make their own lunches, not just because it alleviates me from that, but because it teaches them how to be responsible and how to have fun and take care of themselves.
I can't wait
So
for that also.
I know, right? Amen to that. So getting them in the kitchen is important, and I love the angle that you're going for there, and I think that it's really, really valuable. So thank
Thank
you for
you.
sharing that.
That's awesome.
Um, I see Oleo Baking Company just joined. Hi, Oleo, and I see Gail Backus. Hi, Gail. Good morning. Well, okay, Daisy, let's get a little bit into your Enneagram work. So I know you're new to this,
Yeah,
and
I'm still learning.
well, but I love that. And we've had some really good conversations offline, just trying to figure out, what type you really identify with, the motivation that you lead with. And I'd love if you could just touch on what your experience has been thus far and how you've arrived at the conclusion that you lead with a 9 motivation.
Right. If you remember, originally I mistyped myself as a 2, and I really do. The more I read about it, I bought that book and I was reading about nines, and I was like, man, that really sounds more like me. Like, and I kept flipping back and forth, and I was like, couldn't figure out why I was identifying with both. So you asked me all those series of questions, helped me find out my motivations, deep, deep core, like inner work,
Mm-hmm.
and that led me more towards the 9. But as the more I think about it, it makes sense that I self-identified a 2. My mom is a very hardcore 2, and I think just being raised by her and being around her, I was basically typing myself as that because I want to be like her, or like I
Yeah.
see that and I think that's the right thing to be. And so really like getting to the deeper level and understanding that I'm not that has
Mm-hmm.
helped immensely. Like, it's okay if I don't want to be a 2, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not so bad. So that's been really helpful. And talking to you to bounce questions off of really helped. And then now I can like read more about the nines and get my head around it more.
So I love that. And there's a couple of things I want to touch on with that. First is I think that a lot of women immediately, before they understand the Enneagram and the full picture, identify with the type 2, the giver or the helper. For those of you just learning about the Enneagram, and actually a type 2 just joined. Hi, Tasha. And so, anyway, because the giver and the helper, in seasons of life and womanhood, whether we are a parent or we're caregiving for parents or caregiving for others or excelling at our jobs in our career, there's this inherent divine feminine where we intuitively step into being able to help naturally quite often. It's not for everyone, but it is a fairly common theme among women, to give, to be the one that gives first. And so, you know, when women step into parenthood, especially, we do feel like the helper or the giver. We do feel this motivation to be needed. And Tasha says, I feel like an aggressive too. Maybe we'll talk about that. But anyway, you know, we feel that inherent need. So it's easy to be drawn magnetically to that number as we're reflecting as women on the Enneagram and learning about each type. But I think what we talked about and what I helped teach you was it's not based on behavior or the picture of where your life is right now. It's based on motivation, why you do the things you do, make the choices that you make. And each 9 type has a motivation that's specific to that type. And that was developed during childhood. If you came from a fairly like regular, I hate to use that word, like a privileged childhood where you had a fairly peaceable growing up time frame, typically that motivation is developed between the ages of 8 and 13. Now, that's not always the case. I don't want to speak for everybody, but if I could give an identifiable age where the motivation is developed and the personality is developed, typically we do see that during that time frame more often than not. And that motivation is there created as a way to protect the child that's moving out of innocence and into adulthood. So for the 9, the motivation is to maintain harmony. And that really did speak to you. And I know with the 9s, there's some signature traits. One is to be able to really bring peace to others and peace to a situation, to be neutral when people are going back and forth, you know, and having adversarial issues. The 9s can also, they're deeply fearful of conflict because conflict disrupts that harmony. So, you know, as we talk about the 9 and you look at your day-to-day activities, your work on your blog and with your career and your brand, as well as your work raising 2 awesome boys, how do you see that 9 coming into your life?
Oh, that's a really good question. I will say I've learned a lot from my kids' daycare. They are very socially conscious. They teach a well-rounded kid, and so I've taken some of their terminology. So I think the number one thing that we do here that speaks to me as a 9 is if they're fighting and screaming at each other, you know, toys are taken, pushing, whatever, instead of reacting with discipline or punishment or fear, we have this is what I've stolen from the daycare, is what we call a peace negotiation. And it's like we all sit down calmly as we can. Sometimes they need to calm their bodies first, but we have a calm, peaceful talk, and I help my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old use their words to like communicate about the conflict rather than go to your rooms, stay away from each other, you know, whatever. We're still working on this. Obviously, I'm not perfect, but whenever I do take the time to invest that tactic, you can hear them other times using it themselves. You know, I will hear, no, I don't like that. Let's play like this. And the other one receives that and listens instead of pushing, shoving, stealing, crying, whatever. It doesn't always work, but it's like laying the groundwork for hopefully peaceful negotiations going forward.
I think that's great. And that, you know, really speaks to the type of motivation you lead with, that you would be a great fit for coaching your boys using that method. So I love that you called that out. And I do think that's a very, very fitting offering and suggestion and helpful to all parents. And with that being said, you know, one thing I want to comment about with 9s that I think is interesting with you, and perhaps this might speak to a wing, which I know you're still exploring, but sometimes it takes a lot for a 9 to really build up the courage to understand that they have value to offer the world and they have a voice. And you have really done a beautiful job of doing that through your brand and through your blog. And I think that this is really important for other nines to hear, because sometimes they let the world pass them by out of being fearful of disrupting the apple cart because of that need for harmony. So how do you channel your key motivation and the strength of it and keep the shadow side of it from getting in your way as you drive this awesome brand that you've created?
That's really nice of you to say, because I feel like up until this past weekend when I went to Susie school, that I was doing it, but I didn't feel it. And now after that, I do have recognized that I have just been kind of, I don't want to say half-assed, but like just doing what I thought would be good or make everybody happy. But now it's like, no, that is nothing for me as a person. So I need to do what makes me happy, and that's okay. And it's not going to please everybody, and that's okay also. And I'm just going to start doing things that bring me joy. And so the first thing, like you said, has been the lunch boxes, which seems so small and silly, but to me, it's like, I think it's so fun. And I think I recently put that, you know, I'm not a Pinterest mom all the time. I do the drive-through, but it's okay to be both. Like, and that's okay. And I think before I was trying so hard to seem like I was the Pinterest mom, or I only do fun things, or I only do gourmet meals, but that's not true. Like, we go through Chick-fil-A once a week. Like, sorry, it happens.
Right. So do we.
Yeah, it's delicious.
It's like its own tier on the food pyramid.
I agree. That's a good way to put it.
Well, that's awesome, Daisy. And you know, even though, well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge what you just said, that you know, you really feel like you're coming into your own. And it was you know, just now recently with this experience at Susie School, which I do want to touch on in a minute, that you understood that you have permission to be in the world and use your voice. Having said that, I want to applaud you for doing it anyway, even before that, because that's remarkable. And especially with a withdrawn stance motivation of a 9, where there can be a lot of fear of that disruption of harmony. And so I just want to tell you, great job, like even before that. And it didn't show that it was half-assed at all. It was stunning. And your work is beautiful and it's creative. And 9s take away from this that your offering has so much value. Please don't let the world pass all of us by without putting out into it what you're meant to do. And Daisy's a great example of that as a 9.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So let's talk about the 9 motivation for a minute. You know, the motivation is to have harmony, to maintain harmony, which can create an aversion to conflict. 9s can often suppress anger. They are part of the gut triad, which means anger is their go-to emotion when they're triggered. That's their automatic response system, but they often suppress it, and you won't see it in them until they absolutely boil up and they're, you know, it just all lets loose. My husband's a 9. When he gets mad, it's not fun. It's rare, but not fun. You know, that motivation was developed during childhood. Can you share, to the extent that you're comfortable, a little bit about your childhood and what event or what circumstances might have helped you develop that core motivation?
Okay, so when I was reading through these questions, and like you said previously, the ages from 8 to 13, I didn't know that. Like I thought you were just born with your Enneagram number. I never knew that it developed at that age. And so when I hear the age of 8 or 9, what I immediately go to in my life is, okay, so prior to that, my parents were not together. And I grew up my whole life without them together, which is fine. And like, they did a great job sharing that responsibility. But when I was like 8 or 9, my dad got remarried. And so I'm wondering if, like, when he married her, she had 2 kids and then they had a kid together. So I went from an only child to the oldest of 4 in a couple months. And
Wow.
so I'm wondering if that's where the conflict, resolution, peacemaker, because all of a sudden I had all these siblings and a stepmom and, stuff like that. I'm wondering if that's where it developed then.
Yeah, I think that's really relevant. There's a couple of things that stick out to me on that I want to speak to. First, I want to go back to what you just said about being born with your number. There is definitely a school of thought. It's through the narrative Enneagram school of thought and that's the one I'm training certification in, that you are born to be predisposed to be a certain type.
Gotcha.
So I want to start with that and say you're not off on that. But what's interesting is how we develop based on that predisposal with the circumstances surrounding us. And so, you could be predisposed to be part of the withdrawn stance, or you could be predisposed to be a 9, but it'll be, really whatever happens during that childhood is going to direct you into that motivation. But you absolutely were likely born with a certain mannerism or way that you absorbed information that made you the way that you are now. So I definitely want to acknowledge that you are not off base.
Okay, good.
Yes. The second thing I want to say is that really does make sense to me about your circumstances, about having, 2 separate households, and that was the way that you basically remember your life always being. One thing that's interesting about 9s that can happen during a 9's childhood is that they tend to be led by the adults without really ever having a voice or being asked what choice they would like to make about a certain situation. So when you are like inherently placed between 2 households, you are getting the decisions made for you naturally, with the fact that you're going back and forth between homes. You are getting these siblings, these additional siblings, probably without really having been discussed with you.
Right.
Yeah, right. Like all of these changes are happening and there's zero input coming from you, which often, like in a 9's childhood, can make them feel unseen or like their voice doesn't really matter. So best just to keep the peace. Does that sound like something that would be relatable?
Yes. Okay. So part of it, yes, and then part of it, no. I think so. With most custody agreements, there's a court order, and everybody has to follow it, and everybody's happy or whatever. But like my parents were really good about giving me the choice, like where do you want to spend Thanksgiving, or whose house do you want to go to first, or whatever. So
Great.
that was really nice. Like I never felt pressured to go anywhere I didn't want to go or be with anybody I didn't want to be. Say for example, my mom's Thanksgiving was a little more traditional, then I chose that. And then on my dad's Christmas, was the same because we had all the kids. And so, but they were really understanding on that. But then the second part of what you said, I did feel that way sometimes, like unseen, because I am an introvert also. And so like just quiet, reserved, easy, like I was the easiest kid. Now looking back, it's because I didn't want conflict. Like I hated being in trouble from the day I was born. My grandma was like, you just had to like look at you and you would just burst into tears because you didn't want to be in trouble. And I'm still that way. Like if someone raises their voice at me, I'm like, oh, like no. But now it's like, oh, no wonder. It's like a conflict thing or whatever. But so I do identify with 2 things you said, even though I was given a choice, like I still sometimes felt probably unseen because I was so quiet and reserved.
I think that's great feedback and great way to think about, and very good instance of a childhood as a child developing those 9 motivations. So that's really helpful. Thank you. So we've talked a little bit about the great tip that you offered about peace negotiations between your 2 young boys. You said 3 and 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And I love that, using words to communicate about conflict. How else now that you've learned more about the Enneagram and learned more, like starting to develop that self-awareness of why you do what you do, how else has the Enneagram helped you in motherhood?
Oh, in motherhood. That's really a good question. I thought you were going to ask about the business, so I was ready for that.
Well, let's start there then. I'd love to hear about the business first, and I'll give you time to think about motherhood.
Okay. Well, in the business, so up until this year, okay, I'm 39. Like you said, we have a big birthday next year.
Yep.
Up until I was 39 years old, I feel like my whole life I've chosen or I've done things because they're easy for me. So like I've never done anything that required me to like try really hard. And that sounds really terrible to say. But like for example, in college, I started out as pre-med and I did one semester and I was like, there's no way I'm going to study that much. Like, no way, I can't do it. So I picked a major, accounting, that was easy for me. And I know it's not easy for everyone, but for me, it was easy. So I did it. And I got my degree. And I got my master's. And I got my CPA. And I got a job. And I worked. And I moved up. And it was just easy. So I did it. And then this comes along, or being a mom comes along, and that was like the hardest thing, still is, that I've ever done. Like way harder than I ever thought it could be. And so now at 39, I am trying to check in with myself. Like everything I do, I'm like, am I doing this because it's easy and I can do it, or am I doing it because I like it? And so we go snow skiing every year. And I remember a couple years ago, I was like, do I even like snow skiing? I don't know. Like, do I just do it because I can? Or do I actually physically enjoy it? So like on the mountains, making a note in my head, like, okay, do I really like this? Oh yeah, I do. I love it. Okay, yes, let's keep skiing. Stuff like that. Like, it's like, am I doing recipes because I love them? Or is it because I can and it's here? You know, it's just like checking in with myself. And I guess that applies to motherhood too. Like, for a long time, I've guilted myself into not playing with my kids like Transformers or stuff that they want me to play. I'm like, I don't even like it. And I would feel awful saying that out loud. I'd never said it out loud. I said it to myself. But then I have friends that are like, you know what you do like doing? You do like baking with them. You like doing puzzles. You like going on walks. Like, do the things that you like to do with your kids. And then you don't feel guilty when you don't want to sit on the floor and play Transformers. And that was had no idea that that was an option. And so I think checking in with myself and doing what's true to me, and like, that'll bring out, it only brings out the best. And then I'm a better mom, and then they're better kids, and then my husband's a better husband. You know, like everybody feeds off that positive energy. But if I was in the past, like stifling it and just like begrudgingly doing all the things, I wasn't happy about it. And then like it would come out in other ways. Like the anger would build up and I'd be like, why am I so angry? And it's like, well, no wonder you haven't done anything you like in weeks. You know? So really learning to check in and see what my motivation for doing something is. Even, I mean, and you still have to do things you don't like to do. Like, that's not the thing, but like, you can do more of the things you do like to do.
Absolutely. And I think what you've said here that I want to call out again, like as with the 9 motivation, that harmony, is that you're learning the beautiful art of saying no. And saying no can be hard especially for a type motivated by not getting into conflict, right? By that harmony. So developing that muscle of saying no is really powerful. It's really powerful for everybody, for all the types. Some types it comes more naturally than others. But especially as women, you know, just asking those simple questions. Why am I doing this? Do I actually like this? Right. Or am I doing it because I feel like I have to? And then what is that doing to me? Right?
It's like, it's kind of mind-blowing, eye-opening when you do look back and think like, oh, all those things, like, why was I doing that? Like, and if it's like, oh, I thought my friends wanted me to. No, your friends want you to be you. And like, they don't want you to just do something for them, you know? Like, so it has opened my eyes a lot to basically my last 39 years.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. It's a powerful tool. And I think that is very sound advice and wisdom that we all need to be thinking about. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And that does apply to motherhood. That went across the board, right?
Right.
So let's talk a little bit. We'll hit on this last question, and then I want to touch on one more thing after that. So let me make a note here real quick. So this last question, again, you gave an offering earlier of a great suggestion about peace negotiations between your boys when the fighting really starts. Even as little ones, they learn from that, and they learn this behavior of communication, the power of communication versus the power of throat punching.
Right.
Right? Which, some days we all go there.
Yeah.
But what other parenting secrets or tips would you like to share that you think would help all parents that comes from an Enneagram strength of yours?
Well, I don't know if this is Enneagram. I guess you can tell me that. But what I really have been trying to do since checking in with myself is being present when I check in with them. For example, last night, I think it was last night, my oldest, he's almost 6, was throwing a huge fit, and I didn't know why, and it just seemed like over nothing, and it was, like a disaster. So I was like, you need to calm your body, calm your thoughts, and then when you're ready to talk, let me know. And so he came to me on the couch, and I said, like, what are you feeling? And he was like, I'm feeling sad. And I said, okay, can you tell me, like, do you know why? And he was like, well, you took my iPad away, and that's what I was using to build my Legos. And previously he had done something, and I took the iPad away as punishment or like a consequence. And I thought, like, our Legos come with books, like just use the book. Well, it turns out this one didn't. He can only get the instructions on the iPad. And so, like, when he wanted to do his calming activity of Legos, he couldn't do it because he didn't have the instructions. And so, like, listening to him be able to identify the sadness, and like that was like 20 minutes prior to the meltdown. Like, the meltdown happened over dinner, and I'm thinking, okay, get over it, like, you have to eat, whatever.
Right.
But it was really something that happened 20 minutes prior. It had been building up, and it made him sad, and then he acted out. And like, just being able to, like, give him that space to recognize his feelings, identify it. We talked it through. I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that the iPad was the only way you could get your instructions. Next time I won't do that unless it's like that's the consequence. Then you get to do your Legos. But it wasn't that. That's not what my motivation was. And so really just giving these little guys, like, I've learned so much from them, like giving them the space they need to work it out and communicate. Because I think me, for sure, I'm guilty of, just go. Maybe that is the 9, like, everybody's happy, let's just gloss over it. I don't want anybody to be sad. But it's okay to be sad and, like, feel that emotion, but then talk it through and move on.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you're allowing them to process their emotions, which is so important especially for little boys. Right. Where they haven't, in generations past, been given the space to be allowed to feel emotions that are vulnerable.
Right. And my brother's huge on that too. So I have to thank him for sure, because he knows the way he was raised, and he wants the boys to have a better option.
That's really wonderful. That's incredible self-awareness on his part. Yeah. And just, I think one of the things, again, a 9 is really good at offering peace to others. And so for you to be able to do that with your sons, and them openly communicate with you when you talk to them after they've, had an episode, as all children and all humans do, I think is great. There's something that you said. What's that?
Oh, sorry, my screen went. Yes, sorry, I'm back.
Okay. Okay. So something that you said that I want to call out, that speaks again to your type's motivation of harmony, is you corrected yourself. You said the word punishment, and you stopped yourself, and you said consequence.
Yeah.
And that was a very mindful action that you took. Can you speak about that for a second?
Well, in our house, we really try to not punish or not shame or bring up those negative emotions, but we talk about consequences a lot. So everybody has a choice, And if you make the right choice, you get good consequences. If you make the bad choice, you get bad consequences. And that's how we kind of communicate with the boys. Like, here are your choices. If you choose this, then this is going to happen. And if you choose this, this is going to happen. So that when they do get a negative consequence, like, for example, taking the iPad away, or sometimes they do have to spend time in their room reading or playing alone, but that's a consequence of the choice they made. It's not because I'm punishing them, you know? And so it really puts the responsibility on themselves. And sometimes
that
I'm
is
like,
awesome.
get mad at me because you made this choice.
I think that is really powerful. I hope that everybody watching this captured that. I know I did, and I'll be using that going forward. I think that's great.
I think the way we were raised, it was discipline, punishment, negative, 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 just to, and which for me, I hated being in trouble, so I like always avoid that negative. But some, like my second, he doesn't want to be in trouble, but also he doesn't care. Like he just is crazy, and so he's the one that really like listens to the choices. And if he's in the middle of I'm not gonna do that, whatever, I'm like, okay, well, you can choose this, and this is what's gonna happen, or if you choose that, and then he'll go, oh, okay, and then he like makes the right choice, and I'm like, wow, oh, that was easy.
Wow.
Like, it's crazy, but
you really tapped into something there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that. Yeah. So guys, for those of you watching, seriously, think about what Daisy just advised on that. That's really powerful. And that, to me, gives your kids permission to make choices and understand that the consequences of their choice belong to them. And to kind of remove the terminology of punishment from our vocabularies and operate on accountability and teaching our kids behavior and choices based on accountability and not on fear. So great 9 motivation advice, Daisy. I love that. Thank you. So we have just a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to talk about an experience unique to you that you had mentioned earlier. You had the privilege of attending the Susie School last week. It's a retreat, right? A 3-day retreat in Colorado?
Yes.
And first of all, congratulations for being picked to do that. That's really awesome. And again, this is based on the brand that you've built, My Stir Crazy Kitchen, which for those of you that just joined, please follow her handle, My Stir Crazy Kitchen. And so I'd love for you just to touch a little bit on the Susie School. What sparked you wanting to apply? Because that's a big deal to put yourself out there like that. And then tell me a little bit about the experience.
Okay, so I started following her probably a year ago, like this month. Our mutual friend, Becky, was like, hey, I think you'd love this girl. She's a businesswoman and her husband's a dentist. And so my husband's a dentist. I was like, sure, sounds good. But then as I followed her, you just get drawn into her personality and her life. And then I found out she was hosting these retreats to grow your Instagram, because she monetizes her Instagram. And I was like, oh, that'd be nice. Like, if you're already working it, like if you got money or got paid. And so it's basically, she advertises as a grow your Instagram, monetize your business type retreat. So I was like, that sounds fun. It's limited acceptance. So I applied, not really expecting to get in. And then each round, there's like rounds of, now answer these questions. And then every time I was like, there's no way I'm going to get in the final. But I did. And it got postponed several times because of COVID, and plans changed. But I feel like everything worked out, and I got to go last week, finally. And she bought this like little church annex, and she's turned it into her brand. And I will say, I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to grow my Instagram. And the first 2 days are personal work. Like, the very first day is like uncovering the layers of you and like digging deep with all these women. And I mean, everyone's in tears the whole time. I got like a massive migraine from crying so much, but like I was telling
in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like I relate to everybody. Like, everybody's story, I could be like, oh, I have felt that at some time in my life, or I feel it now, or I could see how I could feel it. And it would be like these, I mean, I was like one of the smallest accounts there. I had 1,600 followers when I went. And I mean, there was girls with 75,000 followers that are already doing this. And I'm like, if they're here, like, and I'm here, you know, like it just seemed, but everybody could relate and share their story. And that was amazing. And then the final day, it's like, boom, 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 here's Instagram. Here's how you do this. And I was like, okay, like at least we got what we came for, right? But we got so much more. Like they had a therapist, life coach there that I mean, we had one-on-one sessions, but like if everybody's just sitting around and she was available, I would be like, hey, I have questions, you know, and like, and she's also a 9, so that helped a lot. Like everything I
Nines
said,
make
like,
great therapists.
yeah,
And great
everything. I'd be
counselors.
like, this is what I'm doing, and she's like, oh, typical 9, and I'm like, really? Like, oh, okay, this makes so much sense. So that was like amazing to have. And I just, Susie herself, like, what you see is what you get. She's got a big heart. She's wild. She's nuts, but like so much fun. And so it was like one of the best experiences of my life. And I'm so glad I invested the time and money into myself. Like, I don't know if I would have done that previously. So I think it came along at the right time. But I'm excited to see, like, to apply what I've learned. And the biggest takeaway I got was like giving me permission to be me, and like I have good ideas and I can do them. Like some of the things the business people would say, I'm like, oh, I've had that in my brain for 3 years. I've just never acted on it because I didn't trust that that was a good idea. And they were like, oh my gosh, it's huge. And so I'm going to go back and like get those ideas out of my brain and into fruition.
That is awesome. And again, I go back to the 9 motivation for harmony and not wanting to disrupt and, you know, not understanding how powerful and important their voices are. And so for you to put yourself out there, which is hard, that's hard for everyone, you know, but it can be really hard, especially for someone in the withdrawing type stance, to really put yourself out there and then to go be among people who, you know, might feel at first intimidating because, you know, if you look at the data and let's,
Right.
you know, you're an accounting girl, yeah, if you look at the data, it would say, well, you know, I don't have as much as they do, but then you look at the present moment and you're like, but I'm sitting among them because
Right.
I'm just as good as they are. And being able to empower each other and really lift each other up, I think it's remarkable. I think women are amazing, and we're really good at doing that when we go into the good parts of our heart. You know, I think it's what's going to save the world.
I totally agree.
Yeah. But you know, being among women that are lifting each other up and finding permission to use your voice, use it even more than you have been.
Right.
How empowering for you. And I just, you know, especially for the Enneagram 9s watching, or, you know, folks in the withdrawing stances, your voice matters. And like surrounding yourself by people that are going to give you permission, even though you don't need people to give you permission.
Right.
If it's affirmation that will help push you forward, that is incredibly powerful. So great work going and doing that for yourself. I'm so inspired by you. I'm inspired by your brand. I'm inspired by your business. I love your lunch boxes. I went and got those bento boxes, which I lived in Japan as a kid, so I already like know
That's
about
awesome.
that packaging.
Yeah.
So when they came out with them here, I was like, finally, we figured out compartmentalization for lunches, except now I can only eat half of what I would like to eat. But, you know, managing portions is important. So anyway, I love that you use those, that you're adding color to something that we normally view as a task. Color and creativity can really change the game. And so for everyone watching, please follow Daisy on my Stir Crazy Kitchen handle. If you've got kiddos, she's got great lunchbox suggestions. If you like to be in your kitchen, there's a cookbook club. There is a blog with recipes that are awesome. There's lifestyle tips. This girl's got it going on. So thank you so much for being with me and for being an awesome Enneagram 9. And sharing your story. Yes. What does it say? Let me see. Yes. I love it. I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
Thank you
there
so
anything?
much. It was
Oh,
so fun.
you bet. And it's my pleasure to have you on here. And let's stay in touch. Okay. I know we've got a little something cooking
Yes.
here coming up in about a month. So
Yes.
it's going to be awesome.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, have a great, let's see, what is today? Wednesday? Have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Daisy. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Everybody, thank you so much for joining. Isn't Daisy awesome? What a cool person. Just so inspirational. Please follow her handle, My Stir Crazy Kitchen, and go check out her blog, which is the link in her bio. Thank you to Gallia Collaborative for sponsoring this episode. Remember, they are offering a prenatal women's circle, so you can follow their handle and check them out. They're for women, by women, dedicated to providing women with accessible expert services and resources to heal, grow, and lead. And speaking of Gallia, our next guest next week, we only have 2 left now, is Dr. Ashley Solomon, who is the founder and owner of Gallia. And she is an Enneagram 6, or she leads with the 6 motivation. She's going to be phenomenal to listen to. So join me next week. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks a lot. Bye.